So yeah, it's 9:16 a.m. Pacific time on this Monday, May 19th, 2025. And first of all, I do apologize if you hear any boom booms. Those are going to be like text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram, you name it. And if you hear a big boom, that's going to be my bank saying something got declined, but that shouldn't be a problem. Hence, henceforth, if you will, because I'm supposed to get my unemployment today. I don't know what time, they go differently, if you know what I mean, especially with direct deposit. But anyway, like I said, basically I do apologize for that if you hear any of that in advance. And I do apologize if I sound a little, a little coffee, if you will. It's allergies and stuff. So anyway, let's get on to the topic of this video, shall we? So a couple of days ago, I talked about how Labyssitory, who has a YouTube channel here, and I will, link him, I will tag him, if you will. But Labyssitory was basically going to spin off one of his main characters, basically a character that's looked at as his, as strange as a comparison it might be to make, as his Mickey Mouse, his, Bugs Bunny, if you will, his Yogi Bear, his centerpiece, if you will, of his creations. And that he was going to spin her off into what is known as the Saunderverse. The character, of course, being that I'm alluding to, I should say, is Emily Saunders. And her character, along with a former rival turned, lover, if you will, now in a three-way relationship with Emily's husband, fiance, boyfriend, Jacob. Emily, along with, her fellow lover, outside of Jacob, of course, Kathleen, they both have powers, but powers of the elastic, shape-shifting, melty, gooey kind. And they like to have fun with it, or like to have fun with them, I should say. And I'm talking the kind of fun that's very, I guess you could say, kinky, if you will, but sometimes on the very, I wouldn't say extreme side, but the very you don't know what's going to come out of them or what they're going to come up with kind of deal to really have a memorable moment. But anyway, to get to the point here, Labyssitory had a lot of this situation, I should say. It's early. I do apologize. Like I said, it's not. Like I said, it's a little after. It's going on 9:20 a.m. So I do apologize as I'm recording this. It's early and everything, and I'm still waking up, believe it or not. But anyway, like I said, Labyssitory had all this situated, if you will, in a way that, from my opinion, he was planning in a very organized way to use this idea so that he could focus on certain days, if not weeks, on other characters in the main Labyssitory verse, if you will, or Omniverse, as he calls it, the main Omniverse, or whatever he's going to be naming it. Basically his plan was to, use certain days or weeks to focus on that, while also dedicating certain days, if not weeks, on the Saunderverse. Basically separate them so there's no confusion and he could be more prepped, or they, I should say, could be more prepped and organized for, what's ahead. So they wouldn't be so convoluted, if you will, and boggled down with a lot of what they got to do. Because one of the things myself and others were wondering about was when's, the continuation of the Emily Saunders story that he was doing at the time to start off season 3 or act 3 or chapter 3, whatever you want to call it. When is it going to continue? Because one thing I did notice is when you would go to his Patreon, and everything, he would give you a link to the OneDrive that contained a lot of his content. And what I noticed, and I know I wasn't the only one, is that when we were looking at the current story, or that he had just finished up, I should say, between Emily and Kathleen, in a story called "It's Something We Gotta Do," or something along the lines, I noticed that the main page, the main comic, if you will, with the speech bubbles and everything, was incomplete. It wasn't finished yet. But the extras, if you will, the original folder, the text list folder, if you will, the text list folder he had, which is just the images and all that. When I looked at that, all that was finished, a little disorganized in the numbering of the pages, of what goes where. But I noticed the text list folder had the story complete and everything, but a little, like I said, disorganized in the, page, the page counter, if you will, trying to figure out what page goes where and everything like that. So I could see why he's doing this just based on that, in my opinion. He wants to make sure he gets not only the Emily Saunders stories out, as quickly as possible, but he can also avoid, those kind of situations. Well, like I said, he had everything planned out. He had everything, sorted out and and all that, ready to go. And let me get some coffee here for a second. Yeah. Oh, that's good. But like I said, he had everything, set and ready to go, right? He had everything set and ready to go. But then disaster struck. Now, last year, I believe it was last year or so, maybe a little over that, maybe a year before, but I had come on this channel, as well as I'd also posted the audio onto my podcast, BW Rosas' Discussions, if you will, which you can find on all your favorite podcast affiliates. I came on here and also, like I said, posted it there, and I talked about how Gumroad.com had let some people that I followed, not just do Patreon, but other places like Echo's Portal, InkBunny.net, DeviantArt, you name it. They had let basically all those people, along with many others, know that a change was coming, and a change not for the better. Because you see, everyone went to Gumroad initially, from what I'm understanding, because they felt like, hey, it's a safe haven to be able to post what we want to post and sell what we want to sell without restrictions. Well, the bigger Gumroad got, and the more people they took on as not just sponsors, but as sellers and all that, the more they took on, if you will, and like I said, the bigger they got, the more things started to change, especially to the point that basically, like I said, the day came where they made the announcement that they were going to remove all shops, all stores selling NFSW-like, material, whether it was artworks, web comics, animations. They would be removed, by Gumroad, unless, and this is the one thing people might say, well, it's kind of a good thing they did this, unless the content creator removed it themselves. So a lot of people, a lot of people that I follow, like Lady Dressamy, Joven16, even Labyssitory, if you will, and even Trouble TRO, they basically removed, not right away, but very slowly, a lot of their content. So the stores, so what that means is those stores are still up there, believe it or not. Yeah, those stores are still up there. The only issue is those stores are empty. Yeah, it's like if you're going to go visit a town, and you're seeing all these stores down this main street and everything, all these local shops and all that, all open, having a little bit of business, bustling them and all that. But then you come to one store, it still has the sign and everything, and it looks like it could be, open for business, but when you go up, to it, you see that it says closed, or basically the business has shut down, closed forever, or moved to a new location and all that. Let's say the third option, move to a new location. And then when you look inside, you see, like, let's say the shelves, some of the signage still, but it's not, but this portion, but this place, I should say, this venue for the store is not operational anymore. But again, according to the sign, they're operational someplace else. Well, that's how a lot of people felt. That, basically because the Gumroad stores were kind of in that kind of, I guess you could say, situation or whatever. Basically, they felt like, hey, we got to move someplace more suitable, more tolerant of what we do. So a lot of folks directly decided to take a lot of what they did on Gumroad and move it over to the Patreon. And so far, Patreon for a lot of people has been okay, sort of. Let me explain. You see, others like Lady Dressamy, she doesn't want to take a chance with Patreon. Yes, she has one, but she only has one to let you know what you could find elsewhere, like at Subscribestar, or she has one where she'll post like WIPs to give you an idea of what she's working on, that, of something, a project, if you will, that you can only find at, at Subscribestar, or to have somebody like Girl Blick, if you will, who she collabs with at times, basically come out and say, hey, here's this new book or this new story me and Dressamy worked on together. You can find it here. And they'll either link you to the Subscribestar, or they'll link you to a separate page on Patreon where you can find it under them, or to a store. So basically, long story short, in a sense, people decided, okay, Patreon could be a safe haven, a tolerable safe haven, but a safe haven. Well, even Patreon, even when the Gumroad, story broke, even Patreon was being brought under scrutiny as well, because very slowly people started to say, yeah, Patreon's a good place to go, for the time being, but they too are also changing. Let me explain. You see, from what I understood, Patreon was basically putting out there that, yeah, you could use us to, sell your content and everything, or make money off your content, but we're going to be very tolerant of what we allow. Now, you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, what that means basically when they say that, they would be tolerant is, yes, on occasions, they will allow certain things to be seen, certain NFSW moments to be had, even to the more kinky, fetishy, extreme side, if you know what I mean. So they'll allow that kind of stuff to be done, but there's a catch. You see, that catch, if you will, is that you have to make sure that, that NFSW stuff is not the only thing your Patreon is about. You have to have substance. And so you have people like Joven16 that, some of those stories mainly involve, that, no doubt, but they have a story, centered around it. Like, for example, one of the stories they just added a new chapter to, Brianna's Secret Life. Basically, Brianna finally came out to these, I guess you could say, very kinky dominatrix-like couple. Basically came out and, revealed not only who she really is, but what she can do. And according to Joven16, these are the kind of people that not only could they probably accept it, but they're into some things that, with Brianna's power, they could be like, this might get interesting. It might be fun. But anyway, point I'm getting at, okay? The thing is, he has a story. He has substance to it. Same with Nanoshift. Has a story, has substance to it. Same with the other story he did, which eventually he's going to get back to, which is Amanda and Nicole. He has story, has substance to it. But along with that story and substance, he also adds in the very kinky, extreme NFSW stuff. So that's why someone like Joven16 can probably slip under the radar and get away with that. Trouble TRO could do the same thing, but they're not taking any chances. You see, Trouble TRO, they basically have decided, because this surprised me one day, but they decided to no longer put, the comic or the images, on Patreon, on the Patreon page itself. Instead, they decided that for a certain tier, you can get access to the newest additions to, let's say, the Pink Benefit story, to the Mission story, to the Science Experiment story, the sequel when that happens, and so on. Basically, they decided that you'll be able to get access to that, depending on a certain tier you go to, but on one condition. That condition is that a link to the OneDrive, the Google Drive, if you will be provided. Just like what Labyssitory does with theirs, a link will be provided. And that way, you can be able to click. So that way, I should say, you'd be able to click on the link and basically get the newest, chapter and everything, or the newest part in the story right then and there in a folder. You get the images individually, the comic pages, if you will. You get the videos, because sometimes they will use one of the AI tools that are out there to, animate certain scenes and everything. You'll get the MP4s on those, or the GIFs, the GIFs on that. And at the end, you'll get the full PDF version to go along with that. So you can read it and look at it on the phone or your mobile device or whatever. So that's the catch. You're paying a certain tier, if you will, not to see the images on the Patreon page, but to click on the link to the Google Drive or the OneDrive to see the latest chapter. And the reason they do that mainly is because of the fact that they don't trust Patreon. They don't trust them. It's like if you put a link, that's fine, but they don't trust them. Which is kind of interesting too, because like I said, Labyssitory does the same thing with the Emily Saunders and their stuff, right? They do the same thing. So that shouldn't be an issue. There's nothing going on there. All they're doing is putting up a preview page or image, and that's it. Nothing more. Nothing more, right? So why would Patreon decide, okay, we're taking you down? We're taking both your main page and your new page for the Saunderverse down. Why would they do that? Well, I went back and forth, talking about this, and I pray and hope something gets worked out between them, because, honestly, it is ridiculous that Patreon, would allow certain things to happen, but also be double standard and not allowing similar things to happen, at the same time. Again, like I said, Trouble TRO, is allowed to do this because they don't trust Patreon. They don't. And Labyssitory was doing the same thing. And now you have to wonder with Trouble TRO, because I'm sure they're going to hear about this. You got to wonder what they're thinking, like, wait a minute. So they took his page away, his main Patreon page, as well as his secondary page he was going to do for the Saunderverse. What does that mean for me? So you got to think, it's going to have him start to think, okay, if they can do that to him, what does that mean for me? So, yeah, he's not, so like I said, Labyssitory's not too happy. And he even tweeted Patreon, on the page, and Patreon support said, look, we can't help you in that manner. It's best to email the main office and stuff. And Labyssitory's like, look, I did that. But knowing your reputation, I'm not going to get anything out of it. And then here's the thing. You know what he's really mad about? He's mad about the fact that he put in, from the number he gave me, or the number he's putting out there, he put in $500. That's right. He basically said that Patreon stole $500 from him. And this is not, money he put in himself. I should say, let me correct myself. It's not money he put in himself. It's money that was given to him via support, via people like me, via people like you and others that are like his kind of work and stuff. He feels that Patreon stole from him, stole the money that was given to him by those that support him. And when you think about it, what that means in reality is not only did they steal from him, the money that was, willingly given to him by supporters like me and you and others, but in a sense, Patreon, they stole from us. When you think about it, yeah. They stole from me. They stole from everybody that supports, people like him. They stole from us because that's our money going out to those people to help them. So basically, Patreon screwed up. And you know what this does, again, for people like Trouble TRO and even Jovin16, it's going to make them wonder, because again, they're going to probably find out about this. It's going to make them wonder, what does that mean for me? What does the future hold for me? Even though I have a link to my OneDrive and people can check out the content there, what does that mean for me? The future basically is painted bleak in that case. But there is a silver lining. That silver lining, believe it or not, is the fact that instead of, just, giving up, he's going to go off and do other things. Because one of the things I asked him basically was, did he ever think about maybe migrating to DeviantArt for subscriptions and maybe even Subscribestar? Because as I mentioned earlier, Lady Drasamy had been known to basically move her stuff over mainly to Subscribestar. Again, she still has a Patreon where she'll talk about certain things being, coming, but you'll only find them at Subscribestar. She moved them there because she don't trust Patreon, especially upon what she had heard, potentially was, changing and coming, the changes coming along the way to Patreon down the line. So she didn't trust them whatsoever. She didn't trust them whatsoever. But I asked him, have you ever thought about subscriptions on DeviantArt and, not just subscriptions, but also subscriptions on Subscribestar? And they said, yeah, the main thing right now is to go DeviantArt subscriptions and then maybe Subscribestar. Now you might ask yourself, well, what do you mean DeviantArt, subscriptions? DeviantArt has a premium, has basically premium areas for people to go to. That's right. They have a premium area for people to go to and everything and make subscriptions possible, depending on the core that you have in your account. In other words, if you have a core account or even a pro, whatever, you could do subscriptions. And what that means is you can get people to subscribe to you or even pay you to buy certain images to own, or certain stories to own. And everything. But they could also, like I say, subscribe to you and support you monthly, so that way you don't have to worry about losing any finances you might lose, because you were dependent someplace else. So that's their plan right now. That's their plan right now, to go with the Saunderverse and their main Labyssitory DeviantArt pages as a source of income, along with Subscribestar down the line. But yeah, Patreon. Look, I have a Patreon, I do. I have it linked in the description, and I appreciate anybody that could support me there. And, when it comes in handy, it is a great source of income because basically Patreon is the kind that I think you can cash out at any time when you reach a certain goal, and especially when you need some money. So I'm cool with that. And everything. People like Saberspark, which I'm happy things are working out well for him, and everything. I didn't talk about that, but I'll probably talk about that down the line if I feel like it. But people like Saberspark, people like Animat, people like, people like Irate Gamer, Chris Bores, they all use Patreon because sometimes YouTube will not allow certain things on the platform. Or even if they do, eventually it'll get flagged, automatically or manually or whatever. So basically they rely on Patreon because, Patreon's that other source of income that will allow them to have a little bit more freelance and everything. But then you might say to yourself, well, what about some of the stuff that's in these videos that they talk about? Because SaberSpark, he'll come on and say, some of the videos that they put might be too, spicy or raunchy or anything, like his Let's Watches and everything that he does with his friend, and so on. And the same with, with Irate Gamer. Like he did a video game review on the adult NES games that came out, and YouTube's like, nope, you can't have that, so you can only find it on Patreon. And, and again, I understand that. I really do. I understand, why they have to do that, because again, YouTube's a great source for content, for content creators, a great place for content creators. It has been for me for almost going on, what is it now, 17 years in a couple of weeks. But the point is, what I'm getting at is they have the limitations. They have, the limitations to what you can talk about and post and do and whatever. So, and I know that from experience, believe it or not. But anyway, they will use Patreon, to, make up for what they won't be able to, do fully or showcase fully for monetization and everything on YouTube. So basically, that's their other outlet. That's their other outlet and everything outside of YouTube. And now places like DeviantArt and Subscribestar are becoming the outlets financially for people like Labyssitory. Potentially for people like Trouble TRO, Lady Dressamy, and others. Because Patreon itself, again, even though they will allow certain things, to pass, there's always got to be something more to, what you're sharing outside of the kinkiness of the extreme NFSW kind that is seen. There's got to be more to it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, Patreon, sites like Patreon and all that, they got to make up their minds. They do. It's either you're all in or you're not. And if you're all in, you need to let those that, from a major perspective, like the major players and all that, you got to let them know, hey, there are certain people on here that we support that are going to showcase certain things that may not suit your fancy, but hey, it brings them money, in turn it brings us money, because Patreon does get a share, a bit of a share, but they get a share. So yeah, again, Patreon, they got to work on what they're doing. They got to work on what they're doing. This is why some people, will go to Kickstarter. Some people will say, hey, buy me a coffee, which is KO-FI. People will, say that instead of Patreon more so than anything, because they don't know what Patreon's going to do. But yeah, I'm hoping and praying Labyssitory Saunderverse does get its Patreon page up and going, because again, it is a double standard, and you should not have double standards. You shouldn't. Again, for me, Patreon's been fine because I haven't really posted that much and everything, because again, I'm not sure if I post something and, say something in the video or whatever, then it might cause something. So I'm not, chancing myself at times, even though my Patreon's not, financially there yet. I hope it will be, especially with the bills and everything coming up with the teeth. But yeah, I basically want to, essentially assume basically that my Patreon, that Patreon will, wake up. The people behind Patreon will wake up and, give back the channel or give back the pages to Labyssitory and others that they took away due to the bots making a mistake or someone not understanding the situation. So hopefully it all gets worked out. But yeah, obviously Patreon has some double standards that they need to work on. And it's either you're all in or you're not. What's it going to be? But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel. Love to hear from each and every one of you on this topic and all that. What do you think is going to happen next, if you will? And how would you feel if this happened to you? Let me know down in the let me know down in the comment section, as well as in the live chat if you haven't done that already. But guys, give me your thoughts. Love to hear everything you feel about this and how you feel. Patreon is kind of having double standards right now. and everything. And excuse me. And how do you feel like if you're someone like Trouble TRO? How do you feel if maybe you see this, you hear about it, and you're like, okay, well, if that happened to this person, what does that mean for me? You know, let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you on this. Again, do all the things in the description box, guys. You know, follow me on Patreon. Follow me at Twitter, at Twitter at BW Roses, TikTok at BW Roses, Blue Sky at BW Roses, Patreon at BW Roses, DeviantArt at DeviantArt.com at BVW1979, InkBunny.net at BW Roses, Rumble.com at BW Roses, Odyssey.com at BW Roses-5, VENMO.com at BW Roses. Also, support me over at Venmo and Cash App. Be greatly appreciated. Also, guys, you can find stuff at my Teespring store. Had to change things around a little bit, but you can find stuff there that you can't find anywhere else. Be greatly appreciated and everything. And, yeah, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video. But, guys, let me know what your thoughts are on this whole situation. And until next time, I'll talk to you all later. But give me your thoughts. And, again, like I said, I'll talk to you all later.